surprised they made another one. They made another hero shooter. Were you asking for this? Was anybody asking for this?
It's 2024, guys. Like, why did we get not one but two last night? And I know they both weren't revealed last night. We knew about Marvel Rivals, we knew about Concord, but looking at the gameplay for both, I thought, you know what? If these existed in a vacuum, maybe they'd be all right. But
maybe if it was 2016.
We know Overwatch exists. We know what that thing looks like. What the hell?
We are going to do a full state of play breakdown. We're going to open. I was going to say we're going to do things in order, but not necessarily. However, we are going to talk about Concord first because it is one of the most talked about games in Sony's portfolio, and it is a first-party title. It was greenlit during the Jim Ryan era. It seemed like it was one of many titles designed to chase the live service. I was going to say live service boom. It is very much a boom, but it's a very specific little radius that Sony themselves have struggled to permeate outside of Helldivers 2, and something like Fair Games kind of came along, got trailer bombed in regards to its reception, and Concord feels like the most recent one of them. So we'll get through all the other games that were at State of Play last night, but Concord seemed like it just felt so focus tested to death. Just Guardians of the Universe.
Just the Guardians vibes were really off-putting, and I think it's frustrating because I actually, when it got to the gameplay side of things, even if we're kind of, you know, it's been, 8 years since... 8 years. Oh my God, 8 years since Overwatch. It's been 8 years since we've had that. We're all kind of getting a little bit fed up with the hero shooter model. But I did kind of think on a gameplay loop and a presentation aspect, I didn't hate it. I actually quite liked aspects of it, but the writing was very much... He's behind me, isn't he? and this guy likes putting hot sauce on his food. What a quirky character. And that really frustrated me.
I wish they opened on the gameplay. That would have been exponentially better.
There was no need for that long cinematic. Like, the world building is not as unique as it is to justify that level of interest. And I think we had a little bit of back and forth before we came on here, Josh, about like the fact that every single sci-fi thing at the minute feels to be, it's doing that half measure between like cyberpunk, western, and it's just kind of fizzling out in a Whedon-esque kind of...
It's an attempt to do a Star Wars, or it's an attempt to do a Marvel, like try and just like test audience style, focus tested type stuff. How do we go right through the middle of this, and then it's just nothing?
That's it. I think I'm more critical about the idea of it than how it actually looks like it plays, or even some of the writing. I am similarly over that stuff as well, and aesthetically I think it could be a little bit better from an art direction perspective, but the character designs, for instance, I actually thought looked pretty sick. Like the variety there, the different heroes that you get to control.
Like the robot guy.
The robot guy. You know, the sniper I thought looked really sick, and I was looking at those characters thinking, okay, that is something. And the cinematics as well. It's sort of like... half of it, I think, is rote and derivative, but half of it, I'm like, I can see this maybe being good. That idea of telling the long-running story bi-weekly installments, like those could be ass and nothing, but they could be a reason to log on more than just getting your dailies and leveling up.
Should have been doing.
Arguably so, I would also agree. You know, telling that story, fleshing that world out week to week, giving you a reason to log on that is, you know, story related and world related, like I said, rather than just unlocking another skin for a gun. I think that's quite a cool reason to keep playing, but overall, I couldn't escape the feeling that if this was announced and launched in even 2020, it would have felt a little bit too late. But 2024, gameplay-wise, for me personally, I think it needed something else. It looks good, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not hating on it massively. I think it looks all right, but I think especially because, like you said, it's a first-party live service multiplayer game, I want it to look a little bit better than all right.
My thing was, I've never seen, I can't remember anything where a game that is first-party has so nakedly chased trends before. Usually first-party games that are coming from the console manufacturers tend to make waves, tend to be the first of their kind, or tend to be something with more of a purpose than trying to cash in. However, to wrap it back around to the gameplay stuff, like you said, there is that ongoing storytelling element to it, and I love if Sony can make that their thing. Like they have that in the single player space, in the offline space, but that idea of what Helldivers kind of kicked into motion, where if you're part of that community, you're getting the updates, you're getting the news broadcasts. Hey, by the way, this enemy's actually loose on this planet, but you don't realize until you're playing the level. There are things like that would work for their first party identity, and it would work for like a meshing of all the offline single player stuff and the story stuff with the multiplayer. I just wonder. I honestly think there's this is the last vestige of the Jim Ryan era. This feels like the last one of all the live service projects that were greenlit under his tenure, and that felt like a big corporate response to the Fortnites, to the Robloxes, the GTA Onlines, etc. How do we just get 50 different Fortnite? At the time, it was like 12 games that were going to be announced, and it got reduced to like 8, I think. And it feels like that just is just so specifically, synthetically what this is, that I wonder if it's actually going to even be able to do seasons worth of content, because people are so immediately off-put by it. And it's not like YouTube, like-dislike stuff is a long-term thing, but the initial reaction to this is, oh God, get it away from me.
I think the interesting thing here is that we're talking about like Overwatch dying, Overwatch 2 being a huge disappointment is kind of like a huge, like we're looking at this thing being quite a dated concept. But I also think maybe if there's a chance for this to be like one last roll of the dice for the hero shooter format, then it maybe could find success, because I think everyone at the minute is just begging for something that, obviously we want like something that's fresh and new, but something that just plays well. Like I played X Defiant last week and I hated it because it was just so janky. But the fact that that game has gotten so many players, I think is a testament to the fact that people who are playing shooters are really, really desperate for something new. We've had these tent poles around for so long now. Even if we get a new COD every year, it's still Warzone that's been going since 2019, 2020. And Fortnite's been going since like 2017. We've had Rainbow Six Siege been going since 2015. That's just unveiled a new subscription service for itself as well. So I think in general, even though it's kind of looking at this and going, it's like nothing we haven't seen before, it does kind of, if it can get if it plays well and it has that a good beta, then I think that could really stand it in good stead.
I think you're right. The reasons that I am not even cynical, but not hot on this game is because I've seen so many games like it, and that is a negative, but I've been conditioned to assume that games that look like this and play like this and go for this kind of audience are gonna nickel and dime me. I wish they would.
I wish they would.
Really dime me. Nickel and dime me. They're gonna give me a progression system that feels kind of predatory and isn't rewarding and is mainly focused on monetization and battle passes and whatnot. So I think I've kind of been conditioned to see this and go, man, this is not going to be for me. I'm not going to get that long-term enjoyment out of it. Because even X Defiant, which I actually thought played pretty decently, I've enjoyed jumping in that game for a match or two. The progression on that, because it's a free-to-play game, is so elongated, and it takes so long to just unlock what I would argue are the basics of a modern shooter. Just your regular AK with a suppressor or a red dot sight. Like that, to me, I just feel like, well, why would I spend double the amount of hours in this when I've done this exact progression in so many other games? So I think with Concord, one, Ewan's right in that front-loading it with a beta so soon could really turn heads if it does play well and it is satisfying, because I think a lot of these games just they always look wonky when you first announce them. I think I've never seen even Overwatch, a hero shooter, where I've gone, oh man, that trailered really well. I feel like just the construction of gameplay trailers especially, it's so, for me, rarely matches up with the reality of how those games actually play. So getting hands-on, I think, is going to be essential, and hopefully if it has that sort of longevity to it that isn't just relying on over monetized elements, I think if it nails those two things, it could really turn me around on the whole project. But right now it looks like one of them so much that I'm also associating it with not just the gameplay or aesthetics, but the business practices as well. All the bad memories.
There's all that, and then it's just like, is this a world you want to spend that much time in? Like, I think Helldivers blew up so much because it was so incredibly reminiscent of like 90s action movies and late 80s action movies, whatever. And the sound design was spot on, the gameplay was awesome. Like, this feels so, like I said, so nakedly derivative and so much reminding you of Overwatch, Apex, everything else.
I agree with you there. Like, it is one of those where I look at it and it feels, we've got that kind of like cutesy, actiony sci-fi where it's like
it's another game where adults are designing it for the teens.
Very like, PG-13. Like, we've got the cute robot mascot, we've got the quirky alien-looking guy. Which again, doing better than Star Wars. So Star Wars is totally reticent to actually like try and actually do any alien stuff. So fair play to Concord in that regard. But I agree with you. I feel like the thing that is killing it for me at this minute is the lack of sincerity. Like I need something to commit to the bit. I'm so over this era of like, well, it's just a goofy guy. And those Guardians of the Galaxy, even beyond just the fact that they're space pirates, like they act and behave like the team don't. Like the big dude is basically Drax in it.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's not the best.
No.
I would agree with you. I feel like that needs to be. But if it plays well, it plays well.
And sorry, go on.
No, go on.
I was going to say, just 'cause we didn't actually mention, other than the long-term story stuff, the other, like the hook for here, the hook in this game's case, I can't get my words out. The hook in the gameplay sense is that whatever objects you deploy, your hero abilities, whatever, they stay for the whole match, that's a cool idea, at least in regards to syncing that up between different player sessions, and whatever those powers are. Like maybe you unlock stuff, maybe you rank up stuff that does fundamentally mean you can box a player in or whatever. Like I think there's potential there to be cool and differentiable, and that would make for cool clips, things that you could separate and actually highlight the game. And I think if they do manage to get it on like PS Plus, just get it in front of people. Don't price tag it. Don't try and do what Destruction All Stars was initially going to do. And if that gameplay's solid enough, it'll at least spike a player base, and then maybe they'll stick around.
Lots of great things. Lots of great points brought by you both there. Where to even begin? I think I'll just go back to what you were saying about the aesthetics and the world and what you mentioned there, Scott. Like, for me, as you may know, I'm a very aesthetic-driven person. I know it's probably ironic if you can see the state of me right now. But, like, generally...
He's a beautiful man. He never has it. He's a beautiful man.
Thanks, fellas. Thanks, fellas. But the point is, like, normally an aesthetic is make or break for me. Like, I didn't want to jump into Street Fighter 6 because aesthetically it just wasn't my thing. But when I'm a hypocrite when it comes to multiplayer stuff because I'm not really... I was never into the world of Overwatch. I thought the character designs looked good, but I don't know anything about that lore. It just played really well.
To be fair, all they ever did was put the lore in the YouTube videos. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like someone with like Titanfall as well. Like mechs aren't my thing. I'm sorry to say it, but the gameplay was so good that I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. Everyone's telling me it's good, and I managed to really enjoy it. So I'm hoping this is a similar case where, I'm a bit sick of the sci-fi Western overall aesthetic, but the character designs, that's something to latch onto. The weapon designs, the asymmetry in the actual gameplay, and that idea that you can deploy traps and then get some satisfaction from that later on in the match. That long-term thinking rather than just the immediacy of it. I can't get my words out either. There's a lot there where I'm like, if I get my hands on it, maybe. And going back to your point, Scott, about not charging for it, I actually hope they do charge for it, and that's only if they can deliver a robust amount of content for that price point.
Progression,
and progression. I'm
Right.
just over the free-to-play model personally. I feel like some games do it really well. I jump into Warzone all the time. Fortnite seems to... I haven't played it in a while, but Dan Durkin tells me Fortnite's still all right. And I just kind of hope that if it had a price point, I'd be more confident in it having a lot of content in there, whereas if it is free-to-play, I'm expecting nothing more than a handful of maps and a couple skins, and I'm like, I personally need more than that if I want to stick with something long term.
That Helldivers 2 price point could be really, really good for a game like this. That kind of £40, £35 kind of area.
It would. I think Helldivers had more goodwill behind it. Like
it came out of nowhere in a way.
It did.
It was, I guess, where it wasn't fighting against the negative announcement like this one is. It was kind of just it's Helldivers.
Because I think the way in for Concord is like if it's free or it's on PlayStation, even if it's on PlayStation Plus for a bit or whatever, just some way of like, okay, fine, I'll give it a shot. And then if it's that good, people stick with it.
I think it's interesting what you're saying about the free-to-play stuff, because I think I agree with you. I think it's one of those where, and I'd be curious to see the general, because obviously it's working, paying dividends with X Defiance. It's got billions of players on it right now, and you're totally right. But I'm with you. I feel like the free-to-play model at the minute, I'm associating that with kind of not long-term experiences. I'm associating it with, you've got me on your platform, now you're going to try and get me to spend as much as possible, and it never feels as tight and intuitive to me as an actual premium product does. And I'm curious to see if that sentiment is actually, because we're just two people.
We're just two people. We're just two guys.
It would be interesting to know if there are other guys out there who are equally kind of,
Absolutely. Like, I didn't even think about the Helldivers price point until you mentioned it, but I think that, for me, that splits the difference quite well. And also, I think you can get people in without making it free-to-play, without putting it on PlayStation Plus, because, like you said about X-Defiant, yes, that was eventually free-to-play, but the buzz for that game came from the betas and the closed tests and the alphas and stuff like that. So I think if if the game is good and you get it out via a beta or via a demo or even a free weekend near launch or following launch, that to me is enough to get people to want to buy in. I would say, without having to make it a PlayStation Plus experience or without having to make it free to play, I have such a worry that if they do go down that route, it's cool because it means more people can jump in and try it, but how many of those people will bounce off when they realize there's maybe not much there?
Yeah, I think the only thing offsetting that is that it is a first-party Sony title, which subsidizes the money side of it. Like they don't necessarily need to make all the money back in the same way a shareholder third party does, where it is supposed to be this almost lost leader thing for them and give you more bang for your buck for free or part of a PlayStation Plus subscription for a longer-term goal. That's my assumption. But I still think the general presentation is so repulsive to the majority of people that it's really going to struggle to make a dent because the reaction was like, "Oh my god!"
Robot.
The same
Full
dude that was in
lad.
He's in Apex and everything else. Like we've done the quirky robot companion, but whatever. I think it looks like it plays well, so we'll see.